Close your mouth, pick any note, doesn't matter which one, and sustain it for 10 seconds. Feel where the vibration goes. Not your throat, not your lips, your face, your sinuses, the bones of your skull. Something just happened inside your head that changed the gas composition of your blood, altered the pressure inside your cranial cavity, and sent a signal directly to a nerve that most people never learn they have. And you did none of it on purpose. That is the first thing to understand about humming. It is not singing. It is not speaking. It is a distinct mechanical event with measurable outputs that your body interprets as a medical intervention. The mechanism begins with the simplest physics imaginable. Air moving through a restricted opening creates back pressure. When you hum, your lips close, or nearly close, your soft palate lowers, your vocal folds adduct. The column of air in your respiratory tract now has a bottleneck at the top. Exhalation continues. Your diaphragm is still contracting, but the outflow is partially obstructed. Something has to give. That something is the pressure inside your airways. Intrathoracic pressure rises, intrapulmonary pressure rises, and the pressure inside your paranasal sinuses, those air-filled cavities in your facial bones, rises too. But here is the part you cannot feel without instrumentation. Your sinuses are not just empty space. Their inner surfaces are lined with a membrane that produces nitric oxide continuously. Nitric oxide, no. A gas molecule that serves as the most potent vasodilator in human physiology. Your sinuses manufacture this molecule and hold it in a reservoir, waiting. During normal, quiet breathing, about half of that NO gets washed into your lungs with each inhalation. The rest stays behind. When you hum, the oscillating pressure wave from your vocal folds travels upward through the pharynx into the nasal cavity and sinuses. That wave, specifically its frequency, which typically falls between 100 and 300 Hz, creates a pumping action that dramatically increases gas exchange between the sinuses and the airstream. Weisberger and Lundberg at the Karolinska Institute measured this directly. They inserted catheters into the nasal cavities of healthy volunteers and sampled gas during humming versus quiet breathing. Quiet exhalation produced nasal nitric oxide concentrations around 20 to 30 parts per billion. Humming raised that number to between 200 and 300 parts per billion, a 10 to 15-fold increase. One subject reached nearly 500 parts per billion. The oscillation frequency of humming, not the volume, not the pitch, but simply the fact of the vocal folds opening and closing 100 to 300 times per second, functions as a mechanical gas pump. Your sinuses are Helmholtz resonators. The same physics that makes a bottle whistle when you blow across its top also pulls nitric oxide out of your sinus membranes and into the air moving toward your lungs. That gas then travels down your trachea, through your bronchi, and into your alveoli. From there it diffuses across the alveolar membrane into your pulmonary capillaries. Nitric oxide binds to the heme group of guanylyl cyclase in your vascular smooth muscle cells. That enzyme then converts guanosine triphosphate into cyclic guanosine monophosphate, cGMP. And cGMP triggers a cascade that ends with the relaxation of actin and myosin filaments. Inside your blood vessel walls, your pulmonary arteries dilate, your systemic arteries dilate, your blood pressure drops. Now I want you to think about the timescale. From the start of a hum to the arrival of nitric oxide in your bloodstream is approximately 2 seconds. 2 seconds, your brain does not process this as an event. You do not feel your arteries widening, but the pressure change is real and it is measurable. A 2017 study from the University of Milan tested exactly this. 20 healthy adults hummed for 5 minutes. Their systolic blood pressure dropped an average of 6 millimeters of mercury. Diastolic dropped 4. Those numbers are small, but a 6-point reduction in systolic pressure across an entire population correlates with a 10% reduction in stroke mortality and a 7% reduction in heart disease mortality. And it took 5 minutes, no pill. No diet change, no exercise, just a sustained note. But there is a second mechanism operating through the same airstream at the same time. The vagus nerve, cranial nerve 10, the longest autonomic nerve in your body. It runs from your brainstem down through your neck, past your heart, through your diaphragm, into your abdomen, innervating your larynx, your lungs, your stomach, your liver, your pancreas, your intestines. It is the primary conduit of your parasympathetic nervous system, the brake pedal on your stress response. When vagal tone is high, your heart rate slows, your digestion activates, your inflammation markers drop, and your blood pressure falls. When vagal tone is low, your sympathetic system dominates, your heart races, your vessels constrict, your pressure rises. Here is what humming does to the vagus nerve. The nerve has branches that innervate the larynx, the recurrent laryngeal nerve, and the superior laryngeal nerve. These branches detect vibration. Specifically, they detect the frequency and amplitude of vocal fold oscillation. That mechanical signal travels back up to the nucleus ambiguus in your brainstem, which then projects to the dorsal motor nucleus of the vagus. The output from that circuit is efferent vagal activity. More vibration equals more vagal output. Your larynx is not just an instrument for making sound, it is a sensor, a vibration transducer that feeds real-time data about your exhalation pattern directly into your autonomic control centers. This is not speculation. The anatomy has been mapped, the nerve fibers have been traced, the reflex arc has a name, the laryngovagal reflex. When you hum, the sustained oscillation of your vocal folds at a consistent frequency produces a steady-state signal that your brainstem interprets as safety, as rest. As a state requiring parasympathetic dominance, your heart rate variability shifts toward the high-frequency band, the band associated with vagal activation. Your respiratory sinus arrhythmia increases, your baroflex sensitivity improves. And all of this happens without your conscious attention. The nerve does not require belief, it requires vibration. Now here is the layer that connects these two mechanisms. Nitric oxide lowers blood pressure directly through vasodilation. Vagal activation lowers blood pressure through heart rate reduction and reduced sympathetic outflow. But they also interact. Nitric oxide itself facilitates vagal transmission. The gas molecule increases the release of acetylcholine from vagal nerve endings. Acetylcholine then binds to muscarinic receptors on your heart and blood vessels, causing further dilation and slowing. The gas and the nerve form a positive feedback loop. Humming triggers nitric oxide release. Nitric oxide enhances vagal signaling. Vagal signaling amplifies the effects of nitric oxide. One breath, one note. Two independent pathways converging on the same clinical endpoint. 5 minutes of humming produces effects that last beyond the humming itself. The half-life of nitric oxide in the bloodstream is approximately 2 to 6 seconds. But the vasodilation it triggers persists for minutes because the downstream signaling cascade, the CGMP pathway, takes time to reverse, and the vagal effects accumulate. Repeated daily humming shifts your autonomic set point. Your baseline vagal tone rises. Your resting heart rate drops. Your blood pressure drifts downward over weeks, not just during the act itself. The 2017 Milan study only measured acute effects. But the physiology strongly suggests, that the benefit is dose-dependent and cumulative. And this is the part of the story that I find striking. Every human culture has hummed. Lullabies across every continent use humming. Monastic traditions from Tibetan Buddhism to Gregorian chant incorporate sustained vocal oscillation. Hindu bhajans, Islamic dhikr, Jewish niggunim, all of them, all independently, arrived at the same practice. They called it meditation. They called it prayer. They called it soothing. But none of them knew about nitric oxide. None of them could trace the vagus nerve. They had the output without the input. The mechanism was invisible to them. So they built stories around the effect. The stories worked, but they were not the physics. Now I want you to think about what humming is not. It is not deep breathing. Deep breathing lowers blood pressure through a different mechanism, increasing intrathoracic pressure, stimulating atrial natriuretic peptide release, and activating the baroreceptor reflex. That works. But deep breathing requires attention. You have to count. You have to control. Humming requires almost none of that. Once you start, the oscillation sustains itself. Your brainstem takes over. The pattern is automatic. You can hum while washing dishes, while walking. While staring at a screen, the barrier to entry is zero, and the effect size for a zero-barrier intervention is disproportionate. The physics also explains why whispering does not work. Whispering is a turbulent airstream passing through a partially open glottis without vocal fold oscillation. No regular frequency, no pressure wave, no pumping action on the sinuses. Whispering actually decreases nasal nitric oxide because the turbulent flow disrupts the laminar pattern that normally draws gas out of the sinus ostia. Humming is laminar oscillation. Whispering is chaotic noise. One is a pump. The other is a leak. Consider also the question of pitch. The research on optimal frequency is not settled. The Weisberger and Lundberg data showed maximal nitric oxide extraction between 100 and 140 Hz for most subjects. That is approximately the range of a male-speaking voice on the lower end, but subjects produced elevated NO across the entire range of humming frequencies they could sustain. There was no pitch that failed to increase NO above resting levels. The mechanism is frequency-dependent, it requires oscillation, but it is not frequency selective. Any hum works, any note, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 5 minutes. The dose-response curve is monotonic. More time humming produces more nitric oxide extraction up to a plateau that no study has yet identified, because no study has asked subjects to hum for an hour. Here is where the evidence calibration becomes important. The nitric oxide pathway from humming to vasodilation is settled physics. The measurement has been replicated, the molecular cascade is known. The vagal reflex is similarly well mapped in animal models and humans. But whether the magnitude of blood pressure change produced by 5 minutes of humming daily produces meaningful long-term cardiovascular risk reduction has not been tested in a prospective trial. No one has randomized 500 people to hum or not hum for a year and measured myocardial infarctions. That study does not exist. What exists is the physiology. And the physiology says the effect is real, the mechanism is plausible, and the risk of the intervention is zero. No adverse events, no drug interactions, no equipment required. The historical anchor for this mechanism belongs to several researchers, but the critical figure is John Lundberg at the Karolinska Institute. In the 1990s, Lundberg was studying the chemistry of exhaled breath. He noticed something strange. Nasal exhalation produced far higher concentrations of nitric oxide than oral exhalation. That made no sense if NO was simply a byproduct of metabolism being washed out of the lungs. Something in the nose was generating NO. He and his colleagues localized the source to the paranasal sinuses. Then they showed that humming increased sinus NO output by an order of magnitude. The paper was published in the European Respiratory Journal in 2002. It has since been cited more than 500 times. Lundberg went on to develop humming as a therapeutic technique for chronic sinusitis, not for blood pressure. The cardiovascular application was a downstream discovery made by others reading his work. But Lundberg himself has cautioned against overstatement. In a 2015 review, he wrote that while humming reliably increases nasal NO, the clinical significance of that increase for systemic vascular function remains to be established in controlled trials. That is honest science. The mechanism is there, the direction of effect is clear, the magnitude is estimated, but estimated is not proven. Your body does not care about the difference between a controlled trial and a physiological inference. Your arteries dilate when nitric oxide binds to guanylyl cyclase, regardless of whether a statistician has signed off on the public health relevance of the effect. But the narrator of a story about humming and blood pressure owes the listener that distinction. The physics supports the connection. The direct evidence from large-scale human trials does not yet exist. Now the convergence. Take everything described here: the nitric oxide pump, the vagal oscillation detector, the laryngovagal reflex, and consider what happens when you hum for 5 continuous minutes. Your sinuses are being flushed with oscillating pressure waves at approximately 200 times per second. Each wave pulls a fresh bolus of NO into the airstream. That NO enters your lungs, diffuses into your blood, and begins dilating vessels within 2 seconds. Simultaneously, your laryngeal nerve endings are firing action potentials up to your brainstem at the same frequency. The nucleus ambiguus integrates that signal and increases efferent vagal output. Your heart rate slows, your sympathetic tone drops, your blood pressure falls through 2 independent, mutually reinforcing channels. You are sitting in a chair, or standing in a kitchen, or lying in bed, and your body is executing a coordinated physiological response that your conscious mind never initiated and cannot stop. Think about what that means for the concept of voluntary control. You decided to hum, the decision originated in your prefrontal cortex, but the cascade that followed, the gas exchange, the enzyme activation, the nerve firing, the vasodilation, none of that is voluntary. You cannot choose to release nitric oxide. You cannot decide to increase vagal tone. Your brainstem does not accept orders. What you have is a biological hack, a way to trick your autonomic nervous system into a state it prefers by feeding it a sensory signal it cannot ignore. The hum is the key, the lock is ancient. And you have always had both. The human larynx evolved for several purposes: protection of the airway during swallowing, phonation for complex communication, but sustained oscillation, humming, may have been the earliest vocalization. Before words, before songs, before any symbolic meaning was attached to sound, the pattern of exhalation with partial glottic closure produces a signal that calms the infant. It crosses every culture, it crosses species. Cats purr in a similar frequency range, 20 to 150 Hz, and the purr has been shown to accelerate bone healing and reduce pain behavior in animal models. The same oscillation frequency, the same mechanical principle. A vibrating structure producing a signal that the organism interprets as safety, not through meaning, through physics. Now the practical question, how long? 5 minutes. The research used 5 minutes because that was the duration that produced measurable NO elevation and detectable vagal effect without causing discomfort. 5 minutes of continuous humming is longer than it sounds. Try it. You will find that your natural pattern is to hum for 10 or 15 seconds, then stop. 5 minutes requires attention, but it does not require sustained attention. You can break it into 1-minute segments. The mechanism does not require continuity. The sinus reservoir refills between hums. The vagal signal integrates over total daily duration, not session length. Hum for 60 seconds in the morning, 60 seconds after lunch, 60 seconds in the evening. The cumulative effect is the same as 5 contiguous minutes. The dose is the dose. You can also vary the technique. Hum through your nose, hum through your mouth with lips closed. Hum with your mouth open on a vowel sound. The oscillation still occurs, the back pressure is still generated, the sinuses still pump, the effect is present in all forms of sustained phonation. The only requirement is regular vocal fold oscillation with a closed or nearly closed glottis. Singing works, chanting works, even a sustained without pitch variation works. The frequency does not need to be constant. The oscillation itself is what matters. The opening and closing of the vocal folds between 100 and 300 times per second. That is the pump. That is the switch. And here is the layer that the research is only beginning to map. The nasal nitric oxide produced during humming does not only enter the lungs. Some fraction diffuses directly across the nasal mucosa into the richly vascularized tissue of the nasal turbinates. From there it enters the venous drainage of the face and travels to the cavernous sinus, a venous structure at the base of your skull. The cavernous sinus is adjacent to the internal carotid artery, which supplies blood to your brain. Local nitric oxide production near the internal carotid could theoretically dilate cerebral vessels. Whether humming increases cerebral blood flow has not been directly measured, but the anatomy suggests it. The pathway is there. The experiment has not been run. The same uncertainty applies to the cognitive effects. Increased cerebral blood flow generally correlates with improved executive function, working memory, and reaction time. But no one has given a battery of cognitive tests before and after. Humming, the prediction from the physiology is clear. Better oxygenation, better waste removal, better nutrient delivery. The brain runs on blood flow. Blood flow runs on vessel diameter. Vessel diameter runs on nitric oxide. And nitric oxide runs on oscillation. The chain is coherent, the links are strong, the final output is unmeasured. You felt all of this at the start of this discussion in the 10 seconds you hummed before the explanation began. Your sinuses pumped, your vagus fired, your blood pressure dropped by an amount too small to feel but too consistent to ignore. You experienced a medical intervention that required no prescription, no provider, no insurance, no knowledge. Your body has always known how to do this. Every ancestor you have hummed, to children, to themselves, in the dark, in the cold. In the hours before sleep, when the world was silent and the only sound was a single note held against the night. They did not know why it worked. They knew that it worked. The mechanism was invisible to them. It is not invisible to you. It is oscillation. It is gas exchange. It is a nerve that listens to vibration. And it is still running inside you right now. Still waiting, still available. 5 minutes, one note.